The neural pathways that determine whether we become moral agents or mechanical consumers are being mapped with terrifying precision, revealing that the choices we make in ordinary moments literally reshape our brains and determine our species' future. I'm Mark Roach, and welcome back to Transcendent. Today we're diving into chapters 40 through 42 of Gurdjieff's masterwork, where Beelzebub's observations reveal how authentic knowledge is systemically destroyed, how individual consciousness can transcend collective degradation, and why American consumer culture represents the most sophisticated form of spiritual death ever achieved by human civilization. The neuroscience validating these insights should wake you up to exactly what's at stake right now. The 40th teaching, The Death of Authentic Knowledge, chapter 40 addresses the most disturbing paradox of human development. How did ancient humans understand cosmic laws so complex that even developed beings like Hassan find them difficult to comprehend? The answer reveals the tragic pattern through which genuine knowledge enters human civilization, flourishes briefly, then degenerates into mechanical formulas completely divorced from understanding. Beelzebub explains that two Chinese brothers achieved genuine understanding of the cosmic law, Hep Parapub Chino. These names that Gurdjieff chose and put into Beelzebub's tales to his grandson are truly comical, and I think there's some metaphorism involved here. But bear with me here, because of this cosmic law named Hepta Parapakshino, through their own consciousness labors and intentional sufferings. Their discoveries included the law of ninefoldedness. Now, this law of ninefoldedness was the precise understanding of cosmic vibrations in the Neuroscience world sound that served as the fundamental unit for all calculations. Most importantly, they created practical applications, including the Lavermanuka, an instrument for studying cosmic laws directly rather than just in theory. But then comes the inevitable pattern of degeneration. First, authentic discovery occurs through conscious work by qualified individuals. Second, the knowledge gets applied practically to create beneficial tools and cultural forms. Third, the mechanical transmission begins as knowledge is passed on to others without understanding of its essential meaning. Fourth, fragmentation occurs as pieces of original knowledge survive but lose connection to the whole. Finally, contemporary corruption emerges as modern people possess fragments that they misunderstood and misapply. Modern neuroscience reveals exactly how this pattern operates at the cellular level. Research on knowledge degradation shows that when information is transmitted without neural integration that's necessary for genuine understanding, it becomes stored in isolated memory networks rather than being woven into the complex associative patterns that characterize genuine expertise. The prefrontal cortex, which integrates information across multiple brain regions, shows decreased activation when people learn mechanically rather than through conscious effort. Contemporary education demonstrates this pattern perfectly. Students retain musical scales, mathematical formulas, and cultural forms without understanding their cosmic significance. They can perform calculations that work practically but remain divorced from their cosmic context. They participate in artistic and architectural patterns that reflect cosmic laws unconsciously, creating what Gurdjieff calls fragments that could serve as bridges back to the genuine understanding if approached with the proper attitude and method. But here's what 2025 this is where today, 2025, becomes crucial. Digital technology is accelerating knowledge degradation at unprecedented rates. A 2024 study from MIT reveals that information processed through AI systems undergoes systemic distortion, with each generation of machine learning producing outputs increasingly disconnected from the original context. The same pattern Gurdjieff observed across centuries now occurs within months as algorithms optimize for engagement rather than understanding. The tragedy isn't just individual ignorance, but collective amnesia. We possess more access to information than civilizations in history, yet we're systemically losing the capacity for the kind of conscious attention necessary to transform information into genuine understanding. The neural pathways required for sustained mental effort are being replaced by addiction pathways optimized for rapid stimulation and immediate gratification. The 41st teaching, the possibility of authentic achievement. Chapter 41 provides hope through Beelzebub's encounter with Haji Avazan Truth, a contemporary human being who independently rediscovered fundamental cosmic laws and applied them with extraordinary effectiveness. This chapter demonstrates what authentic spiritual achievement remains, or why it remains possible even during periods of general degeneration, but only under very specific conditions. Haji Avastat Truth's achievement began when his sheikh noticed what sacred melodies no longer produced their intended spiritual effects. Unlike typical contemporary people who become interested in subjects through frequent exposure, his interest arose through a genuine problem requiring solution. This demonstrates a crucial principle. Authentic interest in higher knowledge emerges from real rather than idle curiosity or fashion. His practical work included creating mechanical musical instruments that produce specific spiritual effects, understanding precise relationships between vibrations and psychological impacts, and developing practical applications for healing and spiritual development. Most significantly, he was the only human being during Beelzebub's centuries on Earth who recognized Beelzebub's true cosmic nature. This recognition occurred because his understanding of cosmic vibrations had developed to the point where he could perceive Beelzebub's actual cosmic status. Modern neuroscience validates the mechanisms underlying Haji Avastat Truth's achievements. Research on expert performance reveals that authentic mastery requires approximately 10,000 hours of deliberate practice, but more importantly, it demands what researchers call effortful processing. And this strengthens neural pathways through sustained attention and conscious integration of feedback. Studies of moral decision-making show that dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which governs conscious reasoning, must actively override automatic emotional responses to achieve utilitarian moral judgments. But this requires tremendous neural resources that can only be sustained when motivation arises from genuine commitment rather than external pressure. The anterior cingulate cortex, which processes both cognitive conflict and empathetic concern, shows increased activation in individuals capable of sustained moral effort. The collaborative methodology Haji Avastat Truth employed demonstrates principles now validated by research on collective intelligence. His partnership with Kurbali Aziz Nuran combined practical engineering, scientific measurement, spiritual application, and collaborative investigation. Modern studies show that such diverse expertise integration produces emergent capabilities that no individual could achieve alone, but only when participants share genuine commitment to the work itself rather than personal recognition. But here's the crucial contemporary application. In 2025, the conditions necessary for this kind of authentic achievement are becoming increasingly rare. Social media algorithms optimize for rapid stimulation rather than sustained attention. Educational systems reward mechanical compliance rather than genuine understanding. Economic pressures force specialization rather than integrated development. The collaborative spaces necessary for authentic investigation are being replaced by competitive platforms designed to extract personal data rather than support genuine development. The 42nd teaching, the American Spiritual Catastrophe. Chapter 42 provides Beelzebub's his analysis on American civilization as the ultimate expression of what happens when three-brained beings develop enormous external capabilities while remaining completely unconscious spiritually. This chapter reads like a prophetic diagnosis of contemporary consumer culture, written decades before its full manifestation. Beelzebub identifies several distinctive characteristics of American psychology that modern research now validates with disturbing precision. Americans process mechanical optimism and automatic faith in progress without understanding what genuine development means. They engage in quantitative thinking where everything gets measured in terms of size, speed, efficiency, and profit, with no recognition of qualitative differences. They demonstrate cultural rootlessness, having severed connections with traditional wisdom sources while attempting to create instant culture through purchasing, importing, and manufacturing significance. The melting pot effect created a culture with no genuine center, leading to frantic attempts to establish identity through external symbols and activities. Most devastatingly, Americans possess enormous energy and practical capability, but have no idea how to direct these gifts toward authentic human development. Contemporary research on consumer psychology validates Beelzebub's observations with alarming precision. A 2022 study published in Current Opinion in Psychology reveals that despite having access to more conveniences and luxuries than any previous generation, Americans are experiencing unprecedented levels of depression, anxiety, and suicide. Mental health crises have increased over 50% in adolescents and 63% in young adults since the rise of digital consumer culture. This mechanism operates through what researchers call evolutionary mismatch. Human neural systems evolved for small group cooperation. Human neural systems evolved for small group cooperation and delayed gratification. But consumer culture exploits these systems through choice and overload, artificial scarcity, and social comparison triggered by endless exposure to curated lifestyles on digital platforms. The result is increased prevalence of social anxiety because our brains are calibrated to costs associated with social rejection in ancestral environments. Studies show that social rejection leads consumers to spend more money on expensive luxury goods and items perceived to be favored by others. This creates bidirectional dysfunction, where increased materialism under social threat increases loneliness and personal debt, both of which contribute to mental illness. The anterior insula, which processes both physical pain and social rejection, shows hyperactivization in people exposed to consumer advertising designed to trigger social comparison anxiety. But the most disturbing finding is how consumer culture systemically degrades moral decision-making capacity. Research on the ventromedial prefrontal cortex reveals that people exposed to materialistic messaging shows decreased activation in brain regions responsible for empathy and ethical reasoning. The neural networks that support utilitarian moral judgment which require conscious effort to override selfish impulses, become progressively weaker when constantly triggered by advertising designed to promote immediate gratification. Beelzebub's reference to Americans as devoted to the foxtrot perfectly captures this pattern: mechanical, repetitive movement without purpose or destination. The constant motion of consumer culture, the endless seeking of satisfaction through external means, creates an illusion of progress while preventing the kind of stillness necessary for authentic development. The integration, understanding our current crisis. Well, these three chapters provide the complete framework for understanding both crisis and opportunity facing human consciousness in 2025. Chapter 40 reveals how authentic knowledge degenerates through mechanical transmission. Chapter 41 demonstrates that individual transformation remains possible through sustained conscious effort applied to genuine problems. Chapter 42 shows what happens when entire civilizations develop external capabilities while remaining spiritually unconscious. The pattern is consistent and validated by contemporary neuroscience. The same neural mechanism that created addiction pathways in consumer culture prevent the development of attention networks necessary for authentic learning. The social media algorithms that generate engagement revenue systemically undermine the prefrontal cortex integration required for moral development. The educational systems that measure success through standardized compliance actively interfere with the kind of conscious effort necessary for genuine understanding. But understanding these mechanisms provides hope for them, just as Haji Avat's Truve achieved extraordinary results by addressing genuine problems with sustained conscious effort. Individuals today can transcend collective degradation by applying the same principles to contemporary challenges. This requires recognizing that most of what passes for education, culture, and progress in contemporary civilization actively prevents rather than supports authentic development. The Netflix algorithms that personalize entertainment to your psychological profile are systemically training your brain for passive consumption rather than active creation. The social media platforms that claim to connect you with others actually isolating you from the kind of sustained attention necessary for genuine relationship. This also means that relatively small amounts of genuine conscious effort applied to consistently can produce extraordinary results because so few people are doing the real work of development. The neuroplasticity that makes you vulnerable to consumer manipulation also makes rapid positive transformation possible when you apply sustained attention to practices that serve genuine rather than artificial needs. For individuals, this means developing the capacity to distinguish between mechanical information consumption and conscious learning that requires sustained effort. It means creating conditions that support the kind of collaborative investigation that Haji Avat's Truve demonstrated rather than competitive individualism that consumer culture promotes. Most importantly, it means applying your efforts to problems that genuinely matter rather than manufactured needs that serve someone else's profit. The question isn't whether you can avoid consumer culture that surrounds us. The question is whether you'll use obvious dysfunction in the culture as motivation for the kind of authentic development that remains possible for those willing to understand the necessary, to undertake the necessary work. The technology that degrades knowledge when used unconsciously can accelerate genuine learning when approached through proper understanding and intention. The American spiritual catastrophe that Beelzebub observed has now become a global phenomenon, but the same cosmic laws that govern authentic development remain available for those who approach them with the kind of conscious effort that transcends cultural conditioning. Your individual choice to engage in genuine rather than mechanical development contributes to the larger evolutionary process that determines whether human potential leads to flourishing or collapse. The neural pathways are being mapped. The choices are becoming clear. The question is whether enough people will choose conscious development over comfortable unconsciousness while there's still time to make a difference. I'm Mark Roach, wishing you all the best.